Okay, what we're going to try and do is take this 2018 World Cup team ranking data and summarize it on this next sheet called the Confederation Summary. And you can see the first cell we're going to try and look at is this one, which is B3. And we want to gather all the data, all the games played by the AFC teams. Now, we could just go straight to the team ranking ones and scroll down and just add them up and then put that in as a number. That's kind of manual, but we're going to try and use Excel to its full power. So we're going to write this in as a formula. So we're going to say equals, and that tells us we're starting a formula. And we want to get the data from the other sheet. So we can just click on the other sheet, and then we can scroll down and we can find Japan was the first AFC team. And you can see it says team ranking, that's the name of the sheet, and D7 is the name of the cell. You can see D down and 17 across. And then we just do plus, which is normally shift equals. And we can find the other AFC teams. So we can see we've got Iran, and do shift plus again to get there. And then we do South Korea, and then plus. And then we have to look down who else was in the Asian Confederation. Saudi Arabia and Australia. And then we press enter, and that's all those numbers sorted out for us. And we have to repeat the process now for the CAF, which is Africa. So go equals, back to the team ranking, scroll our way up, and the best African team was Senegal. There you go, Senegal. Plus, who else is from Africa? Nigeria. Plus, again scrolling down, plus Tunisia, plus Morocco, plus Egypt. And there we go. Going okay so far. We actually have to repeat the process for the CONCACAF, the CONMEBOL, the OFC, and UEFA. Spoiler alert, no one actually qualified from the UFC, so it's fine to just put a 0 there and not put a formula. Okay. Now, hopefully you've got all the formulas correct. If you need to, you might want to pause the video. I'm going to expand the formula here so you can see that. That's the one we did before for AFC. That's the CAF. This is the CONCACAF formula. There are only 3 teams. CONMEBOL. We can leave that as a 0 for OFC because there's nothing there. And that's UEFA, which is 66. That's all the teams up here. I'm going to just contract that again for the moment. Now, it's important we use formulas because you'll see in a moment why it's actually so much simpler to use formulas and get things done. Now, I'm going to click down this bottom cell here, which is supposed to be the played total. Now, we could type in a formula, but we could also press this auto sum button, and it works out, okay, you probably want to sum all the numbers above it. So you press that button, and then you press enter. And the number comes up as 128, which is correct. There were 64 games, and there's 2 teams, so that's 64 times 2, which is 128. So all our numbers are correct. Okay, at this point you're thinking, okay, now I'm going to have to do this for the win, draw, loss, points, goals for, goals against, and goals difference columns, and this is going to be not much better than doing it by pen and paper. But what I'm going to show you is, if we look at the team ranking, all those columns are in the same order. So we've got played, won, drawn, lost, points, goals for, goals against, and goal difference. So we're going to use a little trick. We just want to say, take this formula, and you can see that this is all taken from D up here. We're going to take that and we want it to be E and then F, G. And if you just do a simple thing, like we're just going to put our cell there, and we're just going to hold shift and press the down arrow. That's one way to select those cells, even the one at the bottom. And we're going to then fill across to the right like this. We're just going to select all those cells. And we want that to change and be, for the win one, we want all the D's to be E's. So all these D's up here to be E's. So if you just press Control R, which is fill right, it all does it for us. So you can see here we had, it was D17, D20, D21, D28, D32. It is now all E and F and G and H and I and J and K. And so that all works. And you can see all these numbers start to make sense. So if I just draw on this, you can see this is 51 and this is 51 because the wins and the losses should be equal. The number of draws, that has to be an even number because two teams are involved in a draw. And if we actually add up all of those numbers, 51, 26, 51, it does in fact equal 128. We can see the goals for and the goals against are equal. And obviously the goal difference, that's the difference between the goals scored and the goals against, should be 0. So there's no mistakes in any of those numbers. So how quick and easy was it to then just fill to the right? Okay, now we want to work out the win percentage. So that's going to be the number of wins, say that we're doing the AFC. We want the number of wins divided by the number that were played. And that might give us a relative ranking. Some, UEFA played a lot more games. It's a bit hard to judge whether they actually won more of those. So we're going to say equals again, because we want a formula. We want how many they won, which is in the C column. And we press the slash button, which means divide. You'll see it in the bottom right below the question mark. And then we choose our next number, which is the played, which is 16, and we press enter. Now, we actually said we wanted a win percentage, and normally we will tell you times that by 100. But what you can actually do in Excel is you can click on that cell, and we can come up to here, and this means, oh, we want it to be money. But this one says we want it to be a percentage, and it will automatically do the times 100 for us. And there you go. It's 25%. And exactly as before, we're just going to select all those cells. So we just click on that cell, hold Shift, and press the down arrow, and then we can just press Control D. Now, obviously, this one's given us an error message. Why? Because we're trying to divide by 0. So we're just going to overtype that with 0 and press enter. And there's all the percentages. If we go back to what we were doing earlier, we had to look at this sum here. Just get rid of that. And it says sum B3 to B8. And that sum thing means just add up any of those numbers that are in this range from the B3 cell down to the B8. And that's, if we just press escape, we can get out of that. That's a fairly straightforward sort of formula. We're going to do another formula over here for average position. So we want to start a formula. We start with equals, and it's average. So the formula for average, which is also known as mean, but they call it average. So and you can see as you start typing, it already comes up with it. So you can actually just click and choose that one. I want average. If I just click and choose that, and you can see it's got an opening bracket. I'm going to choose my numbers. So I'm going to go for the team ranking, and if I go up here, I want the Asian teams. The first one again was Japan, so we want the Japan. Let's select that one. And we want to do a comma this time. So a comma, we're not going to do a whole range, we just want the comma. We want Iran, comma, South Korea, comma, Saudi Arabia, comma, and a little old Australia, comma. So we've got all those teams in there. We could just close off the bracket and press enter, but if you just press enter, it assumes you're finishing the formula. So you press enter, and it says 21.6. Now, I don't want to have a decimal at all. And if we go up here to these things, that's expanding the decimals or decreasing the decimals. So I'm going to say decrease the decimal, and it rounds that number off to me for the nearest whole number. So the average position for the AFC was 22, the 22nd. Not great out of 32 teams, to be honest. And we're going to do the same thing for the rest as you did before with the sums. You're going to have to go through and click each individual cell and get an average position. Okay, so we should have got a lovely table like this, and as we can see, our win percentage and our average position are all filled in now. Again, you have some big formulas for this, so if I just expand the formula there, it just shows you everything that's in there, and you can see the thing. Interestingly enough, the Commonwealth Bowl, despite not actually having anyone in the semi-finals, actually had the highest win percentage and the lowest average position. So you would think the Commonwealth Bowl would need more teams for the World Cup. Whereas if we look at UEFA, second best one, slightly less, actually did slightly worse than the Commonwealth Bowl teams on average. Remember, for every France winning it, you've got an Iceland who's not doing very well at all. And then the AFC, CAF, CONCACAF, they seem to be roughly about the same. Maybe the AFC's done a little bit better this year. I think that's because of Japan. OFC all got zeros because no one qualified. Okay. But that's not really telling us how to distribute the 46 remaining positions. Remember, there's 2 kept for playoffs, which is OFC lost. That's why there's no teams there. But we want to like perhaps give not just an average position, but a weighted average. So that's what we're going to try in our next thing, is this weighted average. Okay, so in this case, we split the group, the round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, and if you just these little buttons across the bottom here, you can scroll across to the final. Um, Obviously, a group game and the points you get in the group games, including some from draws, are not as really as important as, say, a round of 16 quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. Winning the final is not as important as playing in a group game. So we want to sort of say, like, the group games are worth less and the finals are worth more. So we're going to say, for example, we're going to say give a weight of 1 to the group games. Now, I could just fill this down like we've done before, but I might want to play with these later, the values. So I'm going to say this equals, and I just press the up arrow once, it equals the cell above it. So it equals 1. And then I can fill that down. So I just grab that second cell of that group and say Control D. And that really helps me, because if I want to change this to 2, it all changes to 2. And if I want to change it to 3, it all changes to 3. And if I want to change it back to 1, it all changes to 1, because it all equals the thing above it. As you can see, they all equal the one above them. And in a weighted average, I'm going to use a formula. So I press my equals again. And it's just the points times the weight. And I can grab all those. Shift and the down arrow key, don't forget, and then just Control D is the simple way to fill down. And again, if I want to make the sum of the points from the group things, I can press the auto sum button up there, press enter. That's just going to scroll back up again. Now don't forget, if you've got a formula like this, it can also be translated across this. So you can copy, which is Control C, click this cell and press just Control V. And there it is. That should be the same. In fact, I'm going to be doing this later on, so you can already put it in there, and it goes, oh, it's 0 at the moment. And then round of 16. So compared to a group game, how much should a knockout round of 16 game be worth? I'm going to go with 2 points. And again, I'm going to say equals the one above it. Grab that second cell, hold the Shift key and the down key, and then press Control D, and so it's all filled out, so I can easily change the numbers. If I want it to be 3 later on, that'd be fine, or 4, or 1.5. You can change all those things. I'm going to leave it at 2 for the moment, and again, I'm just going to say equals the points times the weight, and Control D. And already you can see that that bias towards the Commonwealth and UEFA is quite strong, because no one from the other confederations even won a game in the round of 16. Some got through, but they all lost. I didn't get any points in the round of 16. And my total's already there because I did them before. And we can keep going with that. You can put in any weights you like. So have a go. You can put in any numbers you like for the weights and see what comes out at the end here for these totals. And then we'll talk about this total and these other 4 columns in a moment. Okay, so as you can see, I put in a weight of 1 for the group games, 2 for the round of 16, and then I doubled each time to 4 points, 8 points, 16 points. And as you can see, my total points for each round is always 48, because as I'm halving the number of teams, I'm doubling the number of points. So that's giving me 48 points for each of the knockout stages. So I've got all my totals here. What I want to do is work out then what is the total number of points they earned, the weighted points. Okay, so I'm going to go to my total points and press equals again. I can use my arrow keys to go across and just go hang on left, and I want the total column. And again, I always press Shift plus. I've got a touch screen, so I can just touch that one, and then the plus button again. There we go. Plus this one. I'm going to go plus across here, and plus that one, press enter. 15 points. That was not many points. It doesn't make much surprise because it's the Asian group. Select that whole group again, so it's just holding down the Shift key and the arrow button, down arrow button, and you press Control D, and that's all the points. And just for the hell of it, here's an auto sum, 326 points. Okay, so if we just hide the rest of that just by scrolling across. We've frozen the panes, if you're wondering how that's working. If we look at the percentage of points, we want to know then, of the 326 points, they got 15 points. So we want to make a percentage of the points. We're going to say equals, sorry, I'm going to press equals the 15 divided by the 326, and we press enter. Now, we could Control D this, but we're not going to. You can see I've already actually set this to percentage, by the way. You might want to press the percentage button if you don't get the percentage straight away. My problem here is that if I fill this down, I'll just demonstrate this, it's not going to work. It goes div, it gives me an error. The reason is I don't want this Q10 to, I always want to divide every single number by this 326. So when I go up to this thing, this little trick that not many people know of, I'm going to click the Q10 and then I press my F4 button. Which I have to press the function on this keyboard, function F4. And you can see it's put some dollar signs in front of the Q and a dollar sign in front of the 10. And that means do not change the Q and do not change the 10 for that. And then you can just press enter. And now that formula, without the thing changing, we can fill down and we get a load of percentages. So there you can see it's still all divided by Q10. And naturally, if we auto sum that, we should get obviously 100%. There you go. If you've got Again, if you've got decimals, click the percentage symbol, and if you haven't got nice round whole numbers, you click the decrease decimal button. And if it goes ding and doesn't like it, press the increase one and then the decrease one, and it sort of evens them all out. I know it's about weird, but there you go. All right, now there we can see that still that the majority of points are actually in a weighted points system. Our weighted average is like this. We need to then sort of perhaps work out, if I work out of 46, and I'm going to round this to 2 decimal places, how can I get this? So I'm going to say this equals the percentage of points. I'm going to multiply that just by 46 and press enter. And it gives me 2.12 places. If you've got more decimal places than that, then that's okay. Just play around with the increased decimal, decreased decimal. Now, there is actually another way to do this. You can actually write a formula where you can type round like this, and then you say whatever that number is, I want to give it 2 decimal places, and you can press enter like that. And that's properly rounded then. And again, we can auto sum that, which is that lovely auto sum button there. And that should equal 46.01. There's some rounding there, obviously, that's changing that. And I just want this to be a whole number. So I just want to say equal that and Control D, and I want to, if I expanded the decimal or decrease the decimal, or I could have written the formula round and to 0 spaces. Now there are occasions when actually that rounding thing actually is important, and let's just check. I've written 46 there, but is that true? Is it going to add up to 46? It does add up to 46. There we go. So if I look at this, my problem is those final numbers, and we'll talk about that in the next bit. Okay, our problem here is that we've actually decreased the number of places given to the AFC, Asia, Africa, and North and Central America. And we've got no places for Oceania at all. There are 2 playoff spaces available, but I can imagine, like, when you get everyone to vote on this, they're not going to be happy about that. It does actually suggest that we need 35 teams from UEFA, which is a lot of European teams, but the European teams do seem to be doing better. However, we can't actually decrease any of these. So what we're going to go do is maybe we can decrease some of our values. So we're going to scroll back, and we said it was going to be 2 points. Let's make it 1.5, and then we'll make this one 2, and see how, like, because we set up our spreadsheet well, automatically all the numbers work out, and we're only going to just increase each one by 0.5, and then we'll do a 3, and what do we get? Oh, interesting enough, because of the rounding, some of the numbers round down. We've actually got 45 spots coming up here. I wonder why that is. So we've got the 31 spots for Europe. That's increased some things. It's increased 1 for Asia, but that's only because they didn't do very well in the other rounds. So it's not looking very good, is it? If we wanted to make a decision, we could say that we probably want to give lots more spots to the thing. I'm just going to start writing some numbers here to work this out, because really we need to increase the numbers from Asia, and we need to increase the numbers from Africa as well. So if we said 5, CONCACAF 5, CONMEBOL. Now CONMEBOL is given as 8 here. We can't go much more than 8 because there's only 10 teams in the qualification process. If we go to 10 teams, which is the maximum, there'll be no qualification process. Every single team qualifies every time. So let's leave that one as 8. We'll have to give 1 to the OFC. We've got to give one. That means basically New Zealand's going to qualify every time after beating Tuvalu. What does that leave us? Well, we know it's going to be 46, right? So this has got to equal 46 minus all of that. And it says value because we haven't said sum. So we're going to put a little formula in it. Sum. Yes, your formula don't have to be at the beginning. They could be anywhere. And it says only give 22 spots. So actually, maybe we only give. Maybe that's my final solution. 5, 5, 5, 8, 1, 22. Do you agree? You can play around with the points and see how you go. And if you've got your spreadsheet set up, what is going to be your final answer for how many spots will you give to each one? Okay, I'm going to lock in my final decision. Now, based on what they did last time, look, Asia can get one more spot. It had 5 in 2018, it can have now 6. I'm going to say Africa 6. I'm giving them one more, but I'm saying like they didn't actually play that well. I'm going to give CONCACAF 4. I'm going to give the CONMEBOL, well, they did actually quite well, and they had 5 teams, so I'll give them 2 more for doing well. 7 teams. Oceania, they had 0, so they can have 1 now. And the playoffs are 2. So Europe has what's left. So I'm going to say that equals the 48 minus the playoff spots minus the sum of the rest of the spots. That all makes sense. Doesn't want the brackets. There we go. So that only gives 22 to Europe. So actually, although Europe's got a lot of places, remember they did very, very well. I've given them a lot of places. Fair enough. And I've increased everyone. That should keep everyone happy. They haven't gone down. And actually, we got the percentages of that. So I'm going to say equals this number, C3, divided by our total positions is 48, which is the 46 we were trying to calculate before, plus the 2 playoffs. I'm going to click back up here and do my F4 trick to put the dollar signs in. That's all dollarized and it's already put into percentage mode. Control D. And there we go. I reckon that's fairly fair. But what was FIFA's decision? What did they decide? Well, this is quite interesting. They went for, wait for it. So have a guess. What do you think for Asia? They went with 8. Obviously, they're trying to chase some the money there. China very rarely qualifies, only qualified once and never won a match. 1.3 billion people getting rich. They want them interested and they want them to qualify. So perhaps there was some money decision there. 9 from Africa. That's a big increase for Africa. There are a lot of countries in Africa, over 50 of them, but 9's quite a lot to qualify. CONCACAF, North and South America, that's 6 they've given them. That's up from 3, so that's doubling the numbers. Again, USA, big money, big market, didn't actually qualify for last World Cup. Will qualify for 2026 because they're hosting it along with Mexico and Canada. So those 3 from the will probably already automatically qualify. The CONMEBOL, FIFA only gave them 6, which is interesting. So remember, there's only 10 teams, 4 don't qualify, but still that looks pretty good. They did give 1 to Oceania, which must be very happy for the Kiwis because there's no one else even close to playing football in the area. And they gave 16 to Europe, which is not a huge increase from 14 to 16. It's only 2 spots, and they absolutely owned the World Cup. You can see from our statistical and mathematical analysis, it didn't look that way. And let's look at those percentages. So that equals again that number divided by the 48, and we click on that E10 and we press the F4. Sometimes you might have to press function of F4, also you can just press F4 on your keyboard and make it a percentage and can fill that down. I wrote 100% there, but if you actually delete that and do auto sum, should be 100%. There we go. Do you agree or disagree? Is it interesting that the maths was quite different? And even when I tried to be sort of biased myself and give some of the European spots away, it didn't really work out. Look at that, the weighted average. I thought 31 spots for Europe, but they only gave them an increase of 2, where they gave CONCACAF an increase of 3. Interesting.